Oh, there you are. Hey, fraud friends and family. Now, imagine your everyday transactions, the normal, routine, trusted transactions. What if they became a little bit more sinister? You see, this week on the Friday Fraudster, we're diving into a story where personal information turned into a gold mine for, well, criminals, and the consequences rippled far beyond spreadsheets. The questions we have are, how did it all go unnoticed? And what does it mean for the rest of us, especially around Christmas time? So tune in for a tale of trust, deception, and the surprising ways that fraud take shape. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
Hey, everybody, it's been a while. I've been doing a lot of traveling, and well, Christine actually has a real job, so she's been working, I guess, right? But we are happy to be back. And guess what else we have? We have somebody else here with us today. You probably hadn't seen this guy in a while either.
Hello, everybody.
So let's just dive right in. Let me ask you guys a question. So, have you ever gone to the doctor and just got this sneaking suspicion that something was off?
About me or about the doctor?
Fair point. About the doctor and the office.
Nothing like that. I've had a really awkward encounter, but I never felt like something's not right.
So I just recently had an experience with a doctor who was a surgeon, and they're the type that talk really fast and they want to get in and out as quickly as possible. And it was almost like those old Micro Machine commercials, where they're just talking 90 miles an hour. And so that one just felt off. I did not feel comfortable with that. Afterwards we walked out and I thought the guy was a quack. I was really not impressed with it. I was wrong, but that first impression was not a good one at all.
So I've had a few experiences. For example, about 6 months ago, I went to a doc in the box, and the urgent care places. Sorry, I call them doc in the boxes. But I went to a doc in the box, and as I was standing there, I noticed they did not take my insurance. Actually, you know what? This was about 2 years ago now. They didn't take my insurance. However, what I wanted was something simple, just a really quick checkup, because something wasn't right. And so I looked on their board and they said $250. That's it. So I was like, I'm here. I don't feel like going anywhere else. So let's go ahead and get her done. So I go in, I pay the $250. They hand me my receipt. I walk away. 6 months later,
Okay.
I get a bill for $400 additional. So I called them up and I say, what is this? By the way, I took a picture of their billboard that had the all-in price. So I sent them that and I said, what's going on? Like, what are you trying to charge me for? They said, well, you had a bunch of services performed. No, I didn't. So I had them send me the bill itemized, and all of a sudden, the things that they were trying to charge me for just disappeared.
Oh.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, real funny how that works.
We've had problems with that too, with an urgent care, but we also, since we're a cash payer, being a business owner, health insurance is practically unaffordable. So I'm on a health share network, and because of it, we pay cash out of pocket, and so we actually see the real price that they charge insurance companies and other stuff. And just coincidentally, I'm not going to hold it up, but I have a bill right here in front of me that I just got for my son's surgery, and The amount it says up front is a $30,550 charge. But then the adjustments, now remember, I have no insurance, but the adjustments bring it down to $150.
Wait,
Where
what?
did the $30,400 go? You know, why in the world do they have a bill that's even that
How
amount?
dare
You're only
you?
going to, yeah, right. Love the new sound effects. But it's ridiculous. And so, yeah, who knows how many billings like that are out there that we're not even aware of.
Wow. Look, I only have one thing to say about that, and it's that is insane. So look, I tell you what, one time while working as director of audit for an organization, I witnessed some very interesting things. So there was a nurse who was going into the system looking to see when patients were due to have their next round of controlled substances, pain drugs. And she was taking patients' drugs.
Oh,
Now, here's where it got even more interesting because we had more than one hospital. And for some reason, she had access to patients at another hospital. Little did we know she had a boyfriend who worked at one of our other hospitals. And so they had expanded their network because she would look up patients who were due for a new round of drugs at the other hospital where the boyfriend worked. And if they weren't scheduled to get anything, because, just because your time is up doesn't mean that you might need another round of pain meds, she would have him get those drugs as well. I'm
yeah.
guessing they sold them,
Sold them, or one of them were addicted to it. One of the two. I mean, what is that called? I don't remember the term that's being used now, but where they call it like white collar drugs, pain pills, that kind of thing, is escalating, especially in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. It darn sure is. It's escalating, and it's escalating bad. And so obviously that's a HIPAA violation and a fireable offense, because you couldn't really prove that they were necessarily stealing the drugs, although you knew that they were stealing them. But accessing someone's medical records without a medical necessity, even as an employee, is a violation of HIPAA.
Are you thinking about drug trafficking?
No, I mean, I'm pretty sure they were kind of selling them, but in light of the fact that we didn't have any hard evidence, the thing that you would get them on would be like a HIPAA violation. And I guess my bigger point is, when you have people's information, you can do a lot of things with it. You know what I mean? Shree says, I'm pretty hip. Darn it, I don't have my rim shot. don't have my rim shot.
I don't know. Sometimes when you're sitting there and thinking about that stuff, even outside of that, once they let that PII information out, do you think it's going to be easier to start creating synthetic IDs off of those as well?
Oh, I think it's a heck of a lot easier to create fake IDs once that PII is out there. Personal identifiable information, for those who are unaware. That's what we call it in the field, and it's actually codified in several laws. It's in HIPAA. I think it's in the Reg P, the Privacy Act, where we as employees have a duty and a responsibility to protect our customers' PII, personal identifiable information. Yeah.
Freeze your credit reports. That's what I always say. Freeze them.
That's the best thing you can do. Yeah. Because you never know how that information is being used once someone gets their hands on it. Which brings us to today's story. In today's story, a young woman has been sentenced to 5 years in prison and 3 years supervised release for her role in a long-running credit card fraud scheme. It is alleged, actually, she's been sentenced now. She stole personally identifiable information from more than 125 victims. Now, this was primarily from patient files based at several healthcare providers that she worked at in Kern County. They used that stolen PII to open up fraudulent credit cards, and then they made hundreds of thousands of dollars of purchases for various things. What do you guys think?
I think that sentencing offends me, to be honest. 125 victims. This was a 6-year, more than 6-year period, and 5 years in prison. Give them 5 years per victim. 5 years is such a light, and it's we've all done. I think, Rob, I think you've had this experience where your identity has been stolen before.
Yep.
It takes so much time and effort and money and energy and stress to overcome this. And 5 years for 125 victims, that's not enough to me, in my opinion.
No, I don't think so. I agree with you.
And to your point, Thomas, so the couple stole the PII, opened up the credit cards, and then they purchased home appliances, furniture, designer clothes, and they traveled. And it's speculated that they may have resold many of the items for cash. But here's where it gets worse. In addition to the stolen PII for credit card fraud, they also utilized stolen checks from companies in the county to make fraudulent payments towards the credit card payments. So they stole these people's identities, opened up credit cards, then stole checks from other companies in order to pay back the credit cards that they had stolen.
5 years wasn't enough.
No. That's also smart, right? Because if you're racking up all these credit cards and not paying them, then all of a sudden all these red flags go off, the authorities get involved, and all of that. But by stealing the money to sit there and basically pay it all back like that, they're not getting those red flags. So they don't even know they're victims until, several years, it seems like, for some of these people. So that was, I hate to give them credit, but got to give them credit. They were smart with how they handled that part.
Well, because it is something. How often do you apply for new credit, right?
Yeah.
That would pop up and you're going, well, I don't have that account. Or do you sit there, think of the credit card companies. One sitting there and you're going, well, I think I might still have my Kohl's card open, and not think of something like that. Or a big brand name credit card that you're like, well, maybe I do still have that out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just recently was looking at possibly having a car loan, and whenever I ran my credit report, I was like, "Oh God, I hope I don't have any surprises here." Thankfully, I didn't, but that crossed my mind. You just don't know until, like you said, you run that report.
Yeah, here's what makes this even more interesting to me, because the total dollar amount is just shocking. Maybe not to most people, I don't know. But the total loss exceeded $825,000.
So what's that?
That's almost $1 million. And then Christine is doing the numbers. I know you per person, right?
$6,600 per person. $6,600 per person. And what was 6 years?
I think that shows how smart they were. You keep the number small per person.
$137,000 a year. So
not just the 137,000 a year, but split that in two. You're talking 65,000 per year per person that was part of this scheme. And they were trying to fly under the radar. That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how often do you see? Think about Collins Street Bakery in Corsicana, Texas, right? He started off small and then it escalated really quickly, but he was getting away with it. Something like this. Normally, you see a fraud scheme like this where it escalates and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It feels like they had some restraint and didn't allow it to go huge unless they started really, really small and ramped up. But it seems like they kept it very small per victim.
I'm just wondering about the restitution.
Yeah.
He has an amount. I didn't see an amount for her.
Ooh, let's talk about that for one moment too, though, because that is odd, isn't it? He has an amount that he has to pay for restitution, but I didn't see an amount for her either. And let's add fuel to the fire. Upon going into court, she submitted a letter to the court trying to blame him, saying that he was the perpetrator and he was the mastermind and she had a minimal role in it. However, the court rejected this because they found text messages where it looked like she was the ringleader and instructed him on how to actually conduct the fraud.
Okay, I am going to push on this one because there's a part of me that either the article misstated this or where they're sitting here and going, oh, she was writing this letter, and since she wrote it and had to sit in front of the judge and they found these text messages, they said her sentence was enhanced. I'm calling BS on that because initially she was sentenced to 65 months, 5 years and 5 months. How is it enhanced when you now make her serve just 5 years, 60 months, and then just put her on a 3-year probation after that? Like, yeah, get me out of prison 5 months early and I'll do a 3-year supervised release.
Well, I think it's just the way it's worded, because the way I'm interpreting it, the guy, the boyfriend, I guess, he's the one that was sentenced to 65 months. And she was sentenced to 5 years and then 3 months of supervision.
Oh, yep, I got the last name wrong. See, look at not reading very well today. Because in hers, they kind of mix their stories a little bit more.
Yeah.
So then what did he end up getting? Because it said he was previously sentenced to 65 months.
It looks like he still got 65 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe they added the restitution.
Oh, okay. Wait. Hold on. I think we got that wrong too, because she was ordered to pay the restitution, $825,000. I think.
Yeah.
See, and I got him. Maybe they both got sentenced to the same amount of restitution, because I'm guessing that's all they could probably actually tie back to it.
Yeah. And that's why many of the articles say that it was more than $825,000, but all they could really account for was 825. So who knows how much it really was. And it looks like they actually had decent jobs. I mean, she was in the healthcare field. I couldn't figure out if she was a nurse or a nurse practitioner or an administrative support staff. I kept trying to figure that out. And none of the articles actually mentioned her job, but she either had to be on the administrative side, where she still had access like medical billing or coding, or she had to be direct hands-on as a nurse or something in order to have access to the PII in the system,
Yeah.
So what did he do?
So this is an interesting one. And I guess the lessons for us in here are, you all just said, one, check your credit periodically and look for surprises. If something seems off in your doctor's office, don't trust it. Like when you walk in, if you see medical records just everywhere thrown to and fro like they don't care about it, then something might be an issue. Nowadays, most of them have EMR, electronic medical records. They were required, if you wanted to get money from Medicare and Medicaid, the government years ago required you to implement electronic medical records at your doctor's office. And that's why we had that huge change that occurred several years ago. They actually gave money, stimulus money, for organizations to make that change. So you shouldn't really see hard copy medical records just floating around to and fro, even though most of us, when we walk into the doctor's office, what's the first thing they make us do is fill out this form with pen and paper so that they can then scan it in.
I know.
So I just learned that AOL still exists.
Yes.
So according to the article I just found, so she was sentenced to 60 months in prison, 5 years, and then 3 years supervised released. He was sentenced to the 5 years and 5 months in prison and ordered to pay $693,000 in restitution. I'm wondering, since she stole the data, but then technically he's the one that was using it for the financial gain. I'm wondering if all of the money funneled through him. So that's why he's having to pay the restitution and not her.
Possibly.
Yeah, probably so. It's funny how that works though, because none of it would have happened if it had not been for her ability to access it. But he didn't have to do anything with it after he got it. So, both culpable, obviously, but man.
Now, whenever I was first reading this, I read it not as Wasco County, or Wasco City, something like that, but Waco. So Waco here in Texas, we actually call it Wacko instead of Waco. No offense to anybody that lives in Waco. But over in California, do you know if that's a community property state where they like his money is her money type of scenario? Do you know if it's like that over there as well?
I think it is.
Okay.
For community property?
Yeah.
Depends on what type of community property state it is, I think.
Let's see here. Yes, California is a community property state. That means that in a marriage, most property acquired during the marriage is considered community property. Let's see. What about non-married couples? Let's see that. Let's see here. They have certain rights. They have cohabitation agreements. They do have property ownership if they buy property together. They may have some legal protections that married couples don't have, but California does recognize domestic partnerships.
Gotcha. I wonder if the authorities had a hard time kind of proving a marriage, so they went after him for the money because of that.
Ooh, that's possible. Huh?
Yeah, so I got California must be different. So it looks like you have to file for a declaration of domestic partnership.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Of course, you have to file more paperwork in California. Come on.
I'm gonna say, well, Wisconsin, you have to register it as well. I thought that in Wisconsin, at some point, I think it's if you live with the person for 7 years, then it's common. It's a common marriage.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's how it is. I believe in Texas. I think it's 7 years, somewhere around there. It's a common law marriage.
Ooh, 7 years.
So we do not recognize common law marriage, but we do have some rights and protections for unmarried couples who live together.
Okay, so if you're just joining us today, we are talking about a healthcare professional who used her job to steal the identities of over 125 different people. She and her boyfriend then opened up credit cards on behalf of these people, but then they also stole checks from another company in the area to pay back the debts that they accumulated on the credit cards, or some of them. Total amount that they were able to determine is about $825,000. Both have been sentenced to prison, and at least one of them is going to pay restitution. Now, we're going to go over some of the things of our lessons learned in just a few minutes, but before that, we're going to take a small commercial break. All right, for those of you who know me, for a while, you've heard me talk about artificial intelligence for internal auditors. Now, we have developed a platform that is what I like to call both educational, in other words, helping auditors to learn how to do their jobs better, and a productivity tool helping you save time. Several people have looked at it. We have beta testers. And now what I want to do, if you are interested in something like this, go over to auditleverage.net, sign up for the mailing list. We'll keep you abreast of our developments. Again, that is auditleverage.net. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. I'm having fun here, as you can tell.
Like bop it along.
Okay, so what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen to us?
Freeze credit report.
Ooh, yeah.
Freeze it, yeah, and at least once a year you can pull a free credit report. I think you can pull each one once a year, if I remember right. Correct me if I'm wrong. So maybe just random times in the year do it. But I'm thinking about it from a business standpoint. It seems like she had a lot of access to PII, but that might have been part of her job. So it could be a little more difficult since it's she was working for the company that she was pulling the data from. But there's got to be, I would be doing a deep review if I was that company to see if anyone has access that they shouldn't have access to, and do they really need the information that they do have access to.
Here's the question I have, though. What happened to the company? And let me explain what I mean by that. So again, I was a chief auditor in healthcare. And typically what you do now is, if you really want to be on top of HIPAA, you buy a system that you layer on top of your electronic medical record system. And that system just alerts you to when somebody accesses patient record. And you can set up various parameters. Like if person works at hospital A, why are they accessing records in hospital B? If it's after hours, why is this person accessing this patient's records? If the patient is not scheduled for an appointment, why is someone accessing their records outside of their appointment time? Like, for example, one system that they use that's really popular is called Fair Warning. It gives you a fair warning of when someone is accessing data. There's several others out there on the market, but that's just one that I'm familiar with. So what happened to this healthcare facility? Did they not have controls like that in place? Should they have controls like that in place? Did anyone mention this to them? Is anyone trying to sue them because of this now? Maybe some of their former patients. So that's what I'm wondering.
Probably a class action. There's going to be a lawyer that pulls it together.
Yeah,
that's true.
Especially if, and I didn't look, I don't know if either of you did, if there was any history of these two doing some sort of fraudulent, getting in trouble previously. I could definitely see a lawyer attacking that, saying that you weren't being preventative as a business by employing somebody with a history.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that begs another question, though. Should they be sued? Because oftentimes you could sue a small medical practice and they could go under. They hired someone that did something wrong, but did they do a background check? Did they properly vet the person? And if they did, should they be sued to a point to where the practice might fold?
I see your point, Rob, because not only that, but if they do have reasonable controls in place limiting who has access to PII, and if she did need access to it to do her job, I would be hard pressed to hold the company liable if all of those things were in place.
Yeah.
Do medical places have to cover bond coverage on their employees no different than financial institutions?
I don't think they have to, but some do. Like if it's the person back in the day when you could pay cash for medical practices, for medical services, and people came in with cash, you might see some of the larger clinics that would do that, but that's not really a general practice that people do nowadays.
I assume they focus more on malpractice lawsuits and having insurance to cover that than fraud like this.
Yeah. Because this was sinister, because I would imagine that she knew all of that too. Like, she understood the fact that she could get away with it because she had a lot of access to do a bunch of different things. So.
Yeah. I mean, that would be one way of protection. Although, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're not going to do background checks, you might want to try to look and see if there's a company that will insure you. But I mean, which background checks aren't 100%. I mean, as far as making, it's not going to sit there and tell you who will and will not commit fraud. But it's also something like Kelly talks about a lot. When you do have those thefts from those smaller places, businesses and everything else, organizations, and people don't file charges against them. So there is no track on what's been done.
Ooh, I've got an interesting story about that. But before I do, let's pull up this comment. It makes you wonder why people think the greatest risk to your personal and financial health is committed mostly by those who are in white collar jobs, aka finance professionals. So let me tell you guys a very interesting story, and we'll file this under another one of those. You can't make this up. So I was working for one organization, and this woman came in with a whistleblower complaint that someone was stealing. And as we investigated it, her complaint was 100% legitimate. But the person that was stealing was friends with the EVP in the organization. So that's when stuff got bad for this young lady. So they went out on a witch hunt on this young lady. They looked at her Facebook profile, investigated her prior employment history. And here's what they found. At her previous employer, she had actually committed fraud. She had participated in fraud. The employer did not press charges. However, it was on the news. So it was on the news, and I'm guessing the employer terminated her. And so the people at this organization that she worked for now, we had an honest conversation about it, she and I, and she said, yeah, I did it. She said, but I learned my lesson. I wanted to turn my life around. And that is why I turned in this fraud at this particular organization. Now, the people at this organization, again, the person who was committing the fraud was friends with someone in executive management at this organization. They proceeded to terminate her. And here are the grounds they terminated her on. She lied on her human resources application. Wow. Now, the individual who actually committed the fraud at this organization, he was allowed to retire with full benefits. His full pension was intact and everything. And I remember when they let the young lady go, she came to my office and she said, so this is what I get for trying to do the right thing. And I'll never forget that. I will never forget that.
Yeah, that's the world we live in.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think this is still Stephanie saying background checks are only as accurate as the data available to be verified or as people are willing to share on personal, moral, and ethical character. Yeah. And that's what it was. So we didn't do, oh, by the way, here's the other thing. We didn't do background checks at this organization either. That was something else that came up in some of our previous audits. I don't think we would have found it because I don't think the company prosecuted her. Or maybe they did and we just didn't do a background check. But anyway, so here she is trying to do the right thing at one organization after having done the wrong thing at another organization. And she was punished for actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. It's good to know, or for a fraudster or someone that's doing underhanded stuff, it's good to know the king or good to know the leadership, right? You know, be in bed with them and you can get away with murder. And it's sad.
Yeah. And I will say, I think it's because of stories like these that make my training sessions so valuable. So if you are looking for an auditor to come in and train your audit department at your organization, your Institute of Internal Auditors chapter, or any other organization, give me a call. Go to thatauditguy.com. You can take a look at my course catalog. It's almost complete. You want to see the full course catalog? Just send me a message and I'll email you.
I mean, this, like you were saying, this is hard without data analytics for a company to do this stuff on accessing those records. This is hard to find.
Yeah.
That's why I say one of the best things I had seen was that system called Fair Warning. I mean, this thing was so accurate. If you accessed the record, it would say the date, the time, the computer IP address that you accessed it from, how long you actually looked at the record. Because, some people could lie and say, well, it was an accident. Well, it was an accident for 5 minutes. Like, how does that work? So, but yeah, and the software is expensive too. So I can't imagine small clinics being able to afford it, or at least it used to be expensive. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? It has to be at a price point that clinics will pay it without questioning it, because otherwise they'll say, just like what we do with internal controls and internal audit, if it's a private company, they say, you know what, that's great, but I trust my people. That's a terrible reason not to have something like that on, right? But that's how they're going to justify it. Oh, we don't want to have that expense because we trust the people that we're giving access to this data with.
And we all know trust is not a control.
No.
Oh yeah, this is good. So Stephanie says, if you suspect you are a victim of fraud or a scam, reach out to reportfraud.ftc.gov. Yep, the Federal Trade Commission, they will handle it.
I'm gonna refrain from making a comment about government and fraud, but stop giving them ideas on how to do things. No, I'm kidding. No, that's a great. No, it is the right thing to do to report.
Yeah, you.
Government and fraud? No, that could never, ever happen. Oh wait, this is not Stephanie. I can't see who it is. It's showing up as LinkedIn user.
Showing up as LinkedIn user.
You know what? Let me go and cheat now. Then let me open up my linky in and see if I can see who this person is. Let's see here. Oh, that's Kay.
It takes a little bit of time.
Okay, that was Kay. Gotcha. That was not. Oh, and that's Stephanie saying not Stephanie. So that was Kay. Oh, I should have had this open to begin with. Usually I'll have my cheat sheet, my phone, sitting over here off to the side. But I've got so much going on. You guys should see my setup. I'm having fun over here. I've got one monitor in front of me. I got a second monitor right here. I got my phone right here. And then, of course, I got the soundboard down here.
Jam out Friday.
So, yeah, I've just stepped up my online courses, the way that they are presented and the way that they are done. We've got it going on over here. Anyway, anything else you all want to say about this story? This was a very interesting one.
It's unfortunate because I work in the financial institution industry and I know, this could happen and it stinks.
It does.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, but having a son that is 16 that's going through medical stuff right now, it makes me wonder: has any of his data been stolen, and credit cards and such being taken out with his information as well? And something we don't think about is not just our credit reports, but our kids' credit reports. Because I know that was a big, what was that, late 90s, early 2000s? That started becoming more prevalent with ID fraud, of stealing kids' IDs.
Yeah, they actually recommend that you freeze your kids' credit reports too.
And we've seen it in the financial industry, and this is going to be a sad story, but parents that don't have good credit using their kids' credit.
Yep. Yeah. That happens way more often than it should, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you for joining us this week on episode number, whatever episode number this is. I think it's like 165. If you like this podcast, tell all your friends. Tell them to go subscribe to the YouTube channel, That Audit Guy on YouTube. Join us each and every Friday, except for holidays and when I'm traveling. at
Holidays, traveling, whenever you just don't feel like it. Yeah.
At 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. But you know what? We must be fairly consistent to have gotten to 160 something odd episodes, right?
Yeah. What are you at now?
Yeah, I think it's 165 or 64, something like that.
You're approaching 200.
That shows a whole lot of doggone consistency, you know?
You realize that's over 3 years of consistency. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I can do math.
Wait, that's surprising because you're surprised I'm consistent, or?
How dare you?
Good old Greta Thunberg is getting a real workout over here today. I'm telling you. All right. This is going nowhere fast. Hey, but yeah, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.